Greetings, everybody. Thank you for coming out to our group author reading. This reading is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, which is a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate the voices of women and other underrepresented gender identity authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual quick read sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds in the handout we've provided in the chat and by visiting our website, a link to which will be added to the chat right now. There we go. I'm your host today, Sarah Smith, and you can find more about me in the provided handout as well. Please note that the recording of this session by the audience is not allowed, and recording of electronic communications, including Zoom meetings and webinars without permission, is illegal. So there. Today we'll be featuring 5 authors: Rachel Ann Brune, Lyn Walrath, Mir Seidel, Ibura, and Susan McCauley. Each author will have 8 minutes to read. Here we go. Our first reader is Rachel A. Brune. As a military journalist, Rachel A. Brune spent 5 years telling the Army story. Now the soldiers in her stories keep company with werewolves, fae, and a mad scientist or two. Her debut short story collection, Side Roads, won the 2022 Imagine Award in its category. Rachel, take it away.
Hi, and welcome to the reading. I'm Rachel A. Brune, and I will be reading 2 pieces from Side Roads, both of which were actually inspired by Lynn Hanson's 30 Days of Art in October of 2020. So the first piece I have is called Curiouser and Curiouser. Such a strange habit he had, this picking. Pick, pick, pick at skin, at imperfections, at acne, at the scabs that grew over the bone. Pick, pick, pick. He scratched over half-formed scars until they parted, revealing the moist redness underneath, until they healed over thick white tissue. So strange, so curious, so fragile. When there came no injury to open the elastic skin, he itched until the door opened under his nails, and he held the hole to his arm to lick, lick, lick. It closed. Then the scab would form, and he would have his nail tick. Next trick. So strange, so curious, so fragile. For days he would hold his hands hostage, clip the nails to the quick, flick the little toys that kept his fingers ever moving, ever lickety-spit quick tap-tapping, and finally slipping his digits into the mitts that should have kept him from picking, and yet, after a few days, he must needs remove his gloves, his nails grow long again, and he's back at it. Pick, pick, pickety-pick. So strange, so curious. So fragile these creatures who squirmed and cried and twisted and begged with their strange soft tongues and their curious, delicate bodies. Whatever would happen if he picked to stick, stick, stick those long, sharp nails just a little further beneath the surface. The second piece that I will be reading is again inspired by Lynn Hanson's 30 Days of Art in 2020, and this one is called Tangled. Under the waves, so cold and dark, drifting along in the brine, the little fish nudges the cold blue skin, all wrapped in the soft green vine. Under the waves so cold and dark, the abalones grow, nestled amid the strange, strong limbs, as the currents drift to and fro. Under the waves, so cold and dark, with face turned towards the sun, but no rays can reach beneath the deep, and the kelp is grasping and tangled and creeps around the legs to hold and to keep its prize so cruelly won. That poem was also partly inspired by the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is a fun place to visit. So those are two short pieces from Sideways. There's about 13 or 14 pieces in that book. And if it was to your liking, then I will be doing a giveaway, so please feel free to sign up, and please do visit. I love sharing. Yes, creepy. I love creepy. So thank you very much for coming and for listening.
Wow. Thank you, Rachel. Our second reader is Holly Lyn Walrath. Holly Lyn Walrath's poetry and short fiction has appeared in Strange Horizons, Fireside Fiction, Analog, and Flash Fiction Online. She is the author of several books of poetry, including Glimmerglass Girl, 2018, Numinose Lapidi, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, 2020, and The Smallest of Bones, 2021. She is the managing editor of Interstellar Flight Press. Holly Lyn, over to you, and you can pronounce the name of your second collection better than I can. Thanks.
Thanks. It's Numinose Lapidi, which is Italian. So it's a collection entirely in Italian. I don't speak Italian, but it was translated from English into Italian. So it's pretty cool. And I'm very delighted to be here because Rachel, who just read, has published 2 of my short stories. One in the Coppice and Break anthology, and the second is coming soon in a Woman Unbecoming anthology, all of which the proceeds go to support reproductive health rights. So that's pretty cool to have us both on this. But I'm going to read a little bit today from The Smallest of Bones, and then I might read a little bit of a short story also. The Smallest of Bones is my book of short poems. So each poem each section of the book has a poem that is like sort of a longer poem and then a bunch of little poems. So I'll just read them all together. So sacrum. Formed by the fusing of sacral vertebrae, the sacrum is a large triangular bone at the base of the spine. It is situated between the 2 hard wings of the pelvis. Curved upon itself, the base of the sacrum careens forward. Before the adoption of the word sacrum, the bone was called holy in Greek, hieron ostion, and was used for animal sacrifice. In females of the species, the sacrum is shorter and wider. Researchers comment on how this is more valuable to childbearing, because even our bones are made for what men want. Because as hard as we try to be sacred, they can always use us for sacrifice. In Greek, hieron also meant temple. Within its bony concavity hides the ovaries and uterus, the sacred organs of procreation. Thanks to its great size, the sacrum is usually the last bone of a buried body to rot. You meander through my dreams like the ghost you made out of my future. We are bottled up with each other and the message. There's a town born underwater, and all the people know how to really breathe. But I don't speak this current language. I used to listen to your music on repeat until I discovered all the cuts it was leaving in the hidden places, my thighs and calves. So I stopped putting myself in that position. But pain is like a melody you can't forget. There was this girl I knew who believed in love, but she took up arms. She took up arms, but when it came time to fight, all she found in her arms was a bouquet of pain. When you leave me in the landfills, hotel rooms, temples, and canyons, I feel peaceful for a moment. My mind rests on some slim idea of beauty, and then discomfort slips in like a needle, like the riot of my body displayed in all its unglory. You hold a light up to your teeth. See how transparent I've become. I put my breast in your mouth to shut you up. I grew you in a tank, cartilage and soft spines. Othering you gives me pleasure, that and the taste of your smile. Aren't we still primitive? You asked me in bed. Aren't we still ancestors? And say my name again. Say it into my skin. Carve it on my bones, even the ones I don't use, like my hips. I am holy if I am not a temple. Am I human? We must love like a story, like poetry. We must love. So if you're into that, that's going to be the one I'm giving away later. So there's that. And then I will read a little bit from a short story in Other Terrors, which is the Horror Writers Association anthology that came out in July. This is a historical short fiction. It's called The Asylum. Proem. Men are called insane, but women are called lunatics. The word means moonstruck. A woman's madness is unpredictable, cyclical like the gray moon. Women are driven by its light like tides, full of cracks and flaws, just threatening to let the light show. Administration and reception. One of us practiced lunacy every night in the mirror to get here. We feel quite bad for her because Nellie is a journalist and she merely had to act crazy to get here by pretending to believe she was poisoned. This is not so bad by itself. Some of us did this as well because we were hungry and poor, but also because Nellie seems to think she will be allowed to leave when she tells them the truth. You see, she treats this place like a game, but it's much more than that. We must admit, Nellie is a rather good actress. Even Ida agrees, and Ida saw Sarah Bernhardt die on stage, in French, no less, at her first performance in America with 27 curtain calls. Ida's family is rather rich. In the entryway, there are haircloth sofas, and we are asked to remove our jewelry for safekeeping, our pearls laid neatly in a box labeled with our names. The doctors ask us why we are here, and we never know why, not the real reason. We are not sure where here is until we are locked in the ward by the overseers, who are plain older women named Miss Davis and Miss Brown. No decent married woman would be caught dead in here. That is the message they send. The night they brought Nellie in, we heard her ask, "What if there is a fire?" as Miss Davis locked her door with the little key ring she carries at her waist. We laughed along with the overseers like hyenas. Then all of the women would burn up, Miss Davis said, and retreated to her desk in reception. It has not escaped our attention that Miss Davis and Miss Brown are women, too, but for some reason, we are the ones referred to as such. Nellie begged to God the first 9 nights, having only planned on being here for 10, until someone, we believe it was Ethel, said in the darkness in a low and honestly threatening tone, "She'll not last till morning." Then there was a strangled noise and the voice went quiet. In the morning, Ethel would not speak. When she saw Nellie, she shook her head in terror and tried to run and had to be tied down. The doctors were very curious about the silence, and they cut out Ethel's tongue so they could study it. "Barbarian," said Hattie, who was a scientist, or was before her colleagues had her committed for being a woman with too many ideas. Later, Ethel had convulsions and was sent to the dead house. But of course Nellie did leave, and we are told she went and recounted her story to the newspapers. It was not our story because we are still here. We did take small comfort in the fact that after her little tryst here, Nellie was never quite the same again. She kept it with her, you see, the viciousness this place bred. Oh, there is one thing we forgot to mention about reception, which is the oiled bronze plaque dedicated to the man who donated the money to build this place, which says, "While I live, I hope." We think it's kind of funny, which is the only reason we mention it here. And so you can read more of that short story in the Other Terrors. It has each little section in the asylum, including the baths and the infirmary and so on and so forth. And It's very much inspired by the work of journalist Nellie Bly, who actually did get into a women's asylum in the 1800s so that she could report on the conditions there for the women. So very much inspired by her. That's me. Thanks, y'all.
Fabulous. And she wrote a book. Nellie Bly did. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is worth reading. Thank you so much, Harley Lynn. Our third reader is Mir Seidel. Mir Seidel's novel, The Speed of Clouds, was chosen for several year-end favorites lists in 2018. She's been published in Into the Ruins, the anthology Breathe, and the New York Review of Science Fiction. Her libretto from opera about Nikola Tesla was sung in 3 cities. Here you go, Mir.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to read this very short science fiction story, which I, excuse me, take a little water. You'll be able to hear the whole thing. That's how short it is. And I wrote this right before COVID, and then suddenly masks and breathing took on a whole new meaning. So, My Yellow Pony. Tashi woke up gasping. She'd fallen out of bed with her mask half off her face. She slid the mask all the way off. The safety light by the door glowed orange, and Tashi could see Pony lying next to her. If she just lay there with Pony and didn't move much, they'd be okay, even though the air tasted funny. Pony, you didn't put your mask on. Bad Pony. That's why you turned yellow. Pony trotted back and forth, and Tashi made its whinnying sound. The whinny meant, I'm sorry, I wanted to run around outside. The word gave Tashi a thrill of danger. You know you can't go outside without a max suit, she said. Tashi had never gone outside the walls of Station 2. I know, Pony said. They both laughed, which made Tashi dizzy. Before she went to sleep, Pony's skin had felt rough with little cracks all over. Now its brown coat had turned yellow. Pony changing color wasn't right. She covered it with the blanket, warmed it under her hand, and counted to 50. When she looked, it was still yellow. Jamal had printed Pony for her and made it brown, just like she said. It was her pony, even if it was sick. The other kids, Dan and Aquay and Rohana and little Freedom, who couldn't even talk, had taken their own toys when they left, so Pony had no one to play with except her. But now Tashi really started to feel sick. She got up and pulled on the mask tube till it popped out of the nipple on the wall. Clutching Pony and the mask, she opened the door of the children's room. The hallway was dark except for starlight coming through the clear ceiling. She passed the window. The gray rocks outside loomed like monsters. Tashi ran, and cold slapped her legs. Her feet, tingly and numb, tripped and pushed her into a wall. 3 more doors was where Mommy worked. Security. Security meant keeping everything safe. Tashi got walking again and stumbled through the door. She blinked in the brightness, and her jagged breath sounded like crying. Oh, sweet girl, it's nighttime, her mother said. Her face looked worn and dry. My mask broke, Tashi said, holding it up. Her mother swiveled in her chair and reached her arms out. Tashi ran over and leaned in close to hear her heartbeat. Her mother slipped her own mask over Tashi's head. She took in a slow breath that felt like drinking water when you're thirsty. She heard the whoosh and the high whistle of the airlock and Baxter's clomping boots. He came in holding his suit hood. Put that back on. Are you crazy? Baxter said. You need to stay awake. Just for a minute. She needs it too. Baxter sat on a bench and started pulling off the mech suit. Should have sent her with the others, he muttered, wrestling with his boots. Mommy hugged her tighter. 5 more minutes, then I'll take you back to bed. The other children had all been in the roamer, and then Tashi had run back down the tube between the roamer and home and wouldn't let go of her mother. And then Mommy said she could stay. How long will this one last? Her mother asked. Baxter gave a hard laugh. A week, maybe. Damn wafer's supposed to go 90 days. I know, Mommy said, sounding so tired. Tashi held up Pony to show her mother. Pony's sick, she whispered, 'cause he's yellow. Mommy took Pony in her hand. He needs a mask too, Tashi said. Her mother picked up a wipe and folded into a thick little square, then handed it to Tashi. She held it tight onto Pony's muzzle. That's better, isn't it? Pony whinnied softly. How did it look otherwise? Mommy asked. Like a goddamn oxidation chamber. I need this back, sweet girl, Mommy said, and pulled the mask off Tashi's face. She lowered her head into her mother's lap. Any word from landing base? Baxter asked. I've been trying. Mommy leaned forward and tapped the keys. Still nothing. Baxter crossed the room and peered over her mother's shoulder at the display. Then his hand reached down and grabbed Pony away. He stared at it. This is the same stuff Jamal uses for the joint sealants, he said. His face looked mean and scared. No, it's Pony, Tashi wailed. This is your pony, right, Tosh? Her mother asked. Yes. Tashi's head hurt. She squeezed her eyes shut to make the spots disappear. That means, Mommy said, and Baxter finished. The sealants are starting to crack too. The microbes gotten inside, Mommy said, her voice sounding hollow. Baxter said a very bad word. He dropped Pony on the table and turned away. Tashi grabbed Pony back. She tried to stop crying. Get her out of here. It's not her fault, her mother shouted. Baxter made a strange high sound. What are we going to do, Hayes? Come on, Mommy said to Tashi. I'll take you back to bed. In the children's room, Mommy reattached Tashi's mask and her own. They lay down on the bed together and sang their going to bed song. We can breathe, oh so slow, in and out, top to toe. Tashi hugged Pony tight against her. It'll be okay, she told Pony. Yes, Pony whinnied. The roamer will come back. We'll all get into it. You, me, Mommy, and Baxter. And we'll ride outside for a long time, Tashi said, till we get to landing base. And we'll see Jamal again, said Pony, and Aunt Petra and Aunt Kiona and all the grown-ups. And all the kids, Tashi reminded Pony, and the toys. Then we'll all have supper, Pony said. I will eat hay because that's what horses eat. Everybody else will have cake. And we'll all breathe as much as we want, and nobody will turn yellow. And if you're interested, I'll be giving away a PDF of this story from the anthology Breathe. Thanks.
Oh, dear. Thank you, Mir. Our fourth reader is Ibura. Ibura is a writer from New Orleans. Her fiction focuses on ancient histories and future imaginings. She's written 2 short story collections, the James Tiptree Award winning, I suppose we should say something else now, but it's really the James Tiptree Award. The Tiptree Award winning Ancient, marvelous book, and When the World Wounds. She is also the author of When the World Turned Upside Down, which is a novel for children. Kay, take it.
Thank you so much. It's always wonderful to hear readings. I love how diverse the POVs and the language and the wordplay is in everybody's work. So wonderful. I will be giving away, I also write about writing and think about writing a lot because writers obsess over how we're producing, why we're not producing. So I'll be giving away an ebook about writing called On Finding Your Voice. I'm going to read a short that is complete in and of itself from Ancient. It's now called the Otherwise Award. It was the Tiptree Award when I won it. It's now called the Otherwise Award. And the story is called Debris. Debris has a bad effect on me. It's in my heritage. Everyone knows about the great Limione, who got dust in her nasal holes and spent the rest of her life bequeathing her bones to cripples. It was harmless enough when it began. She offered a few of her decrepit digits to a little boy who was missing a foot. Sharing is a good thing, grandmother told us, hobbling proudly through the house, the motto of benevolence. We stopped admiring her charitable spirit the day she was wheeled home with no skeletal structure from her pelvis down. She waved off our horror by claiming she'd been using her legs less and less. When she was down to just her skull, her daughter, my mother, put my grandmother's head on a marble desk and locked her in the altar room. It is legend how my mother kept my grandmother's eye sockets clean with the pure white feather of a cockatoo. She often sent me to the forest to pick marigolds to stack high around grandmother's skull. Grandmother loved the smell of them. She told me so every time I entered the house with an armful of the fragrant weeds. After my grandmother's head had been sitting in the altar room for a month, my mother realized my grandmother was dying, not because of her missing body, but because she was bored. Mother brought grandmother into the living room and positioned her right in front of the window. There, grandmother sat happily for a week until Dad caught her promising her skull to an epileptic candy vendor. Mother couldn't bear the thought of locking grandmother up again, so Dad came up with the idea of sitting her in the middle of the living room facing the kitchen. Grandmother didn't have much visual stimulation, but she could hear the sounds of the street. While staring at boiling pots and waiting for one of us to keep her company, grandmother amused herself I'm going to turn the chat off because I'm just reading the chat while I'm reading, which is influencing my reading. I'll back up a little bit. So Dad came up with the idea of sitting her in the middle of the living room facing the kitchen. Grandmother didn't have much visual stimulation, but she could hear the sounds of the street. While staring at boiling pots and waiting for one of us to keep her company, grandmother amused herself by mounting day-long monologues in response to the whizzing, clicking, and chattering that wafted into the house through the window. One November, Trusha decided we should suit up and go down to Earth for the Days of the Dead. The humans make so much mischief during those days, they don't notice us creaking through on our bones. My costume had seen better days. Trusha said it was my sin that had made me run my robes down into tatters. Lorky doesn't believe in sin. He doesn't believe in costumes either. Easy not to believe in anything when you're always aligned. When I started slipping out the door that November night, I swore I heard grandmother whisper, "Be ill." I stopped and looked back, but she was silent. I stared at the cracks that worried their way down the back of her skull, but they too were silent. Grandmother said nothing more as I turned and slipped out the door. Down on Earth, we looked for the cemetery with the most lights. We figured the busiest graveyards were best. While people drank, ate, and cried for their dead, we could sneak in unnoticed. We found what we were looking for in Oaxaca, a tiny little desert town in the middle of 6 kissing mountains. Lorky's black velvet cape covered us as we rushed into the swirl of activity on a dark, dank wind. The minute we landed, I started trembling. That happens whenever I find myself in close proximity to humans. They have the best emotions. Their feelings are so sharp and hysterical and self-propelling. Their auras make me vibrate. With the candlelight swimming around us, the buzz of voices and the emotions flying through the air, I felt a sense of intoxication, a grandeur. How can I explain what it felt like to dance with a stilt walker whose stilts were thicker than my femur? How can I tell you about the eerie, flesh-like shadow that shrouded Trusha's cheeks as she laughed at Lorky yanking people's souls out of their chests and juggling them with one long-boned hand? How can I describe the moist succulence of a tiny child's fear when it glimpsed my weathered, pocky bones and swallowed the sight of me with undiluted dread? Trusha thought it funny to pass her hand through people's spines. She would reach into their backs until her wrist bone was buried in their flesh. She'd rub the tip of her index finger along their hearts moaning filthily when their bodies went stiff with pain. While she was enticing me to find a spine to disturb, I felt a sudden chill licking between my 5th and 6th vertebrae. When I turned around, I saw a huge child running toward me. "You can't catch me," it yelled. The child did not touch me, but the force of it passing knocked me over. I fell across a grave, and a parade of children, yelping in delighted terror, ran by. Humans are dirty beings. They never learned how to transcend Earth, especially in their graveyards. The debris kicked up by those murderous little feet covered me in a canopy of dust. This was not the little spray of dirt that, once stuck in grandmother's nasal openings, induced her suicidal bone endowment spree. This was huge clumps of dirt. I was clogged. I was suffocated. I was nothing more than a pile of jammed joints and rigid bones. Lorky tugged at the bowl of my pelvis. Trusha yanked at my ankle bones, but the debris was stronger than their worry. Trusha pulled harder and harder, but I didn't stir, couldn't stir. Every inch of me was paralyzed. A little girl approached me. Her arms were full of marigolds. She started framing me with them. She stuck some through my ribs, a few under my jawbone, 6 or 7 around my skull. When the earth under me started shifting, Lorky and Trusha couldn't bear it. They didn't stay to see the dirt seizing bits of bone to feed the grave beneath me. They went home. When my body was completely dissolved, I became something else. The spirits that haunt these graves say I am one of them. They roam the confines of the cemetery, licking leaves, drinking morning mist, and planting crazy notions in human flesh. Lorky and Trusha will never return to witness the proof that there is breath beyond the bones. Yet when the spirits retire to their graves, I find what's left of me grasping at sticks to scratch symbols in the dirt. Grandmother may never understand the shrieks I now use to communicate, but I must conjure a way to tell her the truth. She must discard her skull. We are more, so much more than elegant skeletal spectacles. I will find a way to whisper it to grandmother. May your cranium be eaten away. There is something else beneath the bone, something indestructible, something nothing, not even debris, can destroy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Love that. Our final reader is Susan McCauley. Susan McCauley is an award-winning author of paranormal, fantasy, and horror. She first fell in love with the paranormal when she was 3 years old and scared witless on Disney's Haunted Mansion ride. I'm with you there. But begged her parents to ride again and again and again. You can visit her on the web at www.sbmccauley.com, and we'll have that link for you in the chat. Susan, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much. I feel like I should give everyone a little overview. I've got this cute, sweet, non-genre picture book coming out, which is crazy, but my debut was a YA paranormal. And then I've got my Ghost Hunter series, which you see on the screen, and I'm going to read a bit from the first one. And if there's time, I'm going to read a little bit from my very, very twisted and disturbing Demon Tailor, which is an adult horror that is absolutely intense and bloody. And these are the kids' books are spooky fun. They're kind of like R.L. Stine, but they've got more heart. So I'm reading from a part in the middle of the first Ghost Hunters book, Ghost Hunters, Bones in the Wall. And so in this world, it's a fantasy paranormal. Alex, the main character, is 12 years old. He's not a psychic. He doesn't want to be a psychic. There's a small percentage of the population that can hear and see ghosts. He's not one of them, and he's really, really glad about that because they're kind of ostracized. But ghosts are commonplace in this world, and the psychics have to deal with that ghost problem. Well, Alex and his mother get into an accident, and his life is turned upside down. He's physically injured, and he goes from being a very popular athletic kid in school to this kid who can hear and see ghosts, and he doesn't want that. So he has to deal with his broken body as well as this new gift that kind of makes him an outcast in society. And so he's struggling with that. His father doesn't really believe him, thinks it has to be all made up, all in his head, because you become a psychic by the time you're 10, usually. If you're not, you never will be. Well, Alex is 12 and he's become one. So he's grappling with that, and he's about to have an encounter at night with the spirit. Thunder rumbled, leaves thrashed, and rain slapped against my bedroom window, ripping me away from the comfort of sleep. My eyes snapped open and darted around the shadows of my room. White walls, the alarm clock, glowing pale green, my picture with Mom. A scratching rustle made me sit up on my elbows and look back toward the window. My sigils were still intact. Good. Scratch. Must be a tree branch. Scratch. Whatever it wasn't at the window. I sat up a little taller and looked around the room. Maybe a squirrel had gotten inside looking for shelter. Scratch. The sound of claws against the floorboards crept right up next to me. I tossed back the covers, ready to bolt, but something cold shoved me back in bed so hard the air left my lungs in a whoosh. I gasped, struggling for breath. Then the pressure started, like an elephant sitting on my chest. The pressure was so intense I could barely breathe. I opened my mouth to call out for Mrs. Wilson, for Dad, for anybody, but only a small whoosh of air escaped, and my Mom's Nazar Bonjuk amulet slid uselessly over my shoulder. So much for it keeping evil away. If I didn't do something, and soon I'd black out. I'd die. I didn't want to die. I'd survived the accident for some reason. I had to survive this. I fumbled under the sheets, fingers groping for the holy water I must have dropped while I was sleeping. The bed shook, rattling itself against the walls, then began to rise. A low moan of cold air hissed out of the entity's mouth, inches from my face. If I could scream, I would do it now. I didn't care if Dad thought I was crazy. There was a real evil presence in my room, right on top of me. And if I didn't find the holy water, this ghost was going to kill me. Nails tearing over sheets, I searched the spaces between the pillows. A cool glass bottle rolled against my arm. I hooked the bottle with the crook of my left arm and wiggled my right hand across the top of my chest. I couldn't quite reach it. The entity laughed. The same cold, dark laugh I'd heard when I'd found that desperate woman calling through the basement wall. I shimmied my left arm up, right hand reaching down. My fingers grazed the plastic cap. Almost there. Got it. I flipped the lid off with my right thumb, tore my hand loose from the covers, and threw the contents of the entire bottle on the dark mass. A scream more horrific than the screeching of car metal clashing filled the room. The weight immediately lifted from me, and a sharp pain jolted my wrist, knocking the empty bottle from my hand. A roar of anger ripped through my bedroom, blowing the books from their shelves and finally exploding through the bedroom window. Glass rained down on the carpet like shredded glitter. I cupped my throbbing wrist and sat totally still, waiting, watching, wondering if he was gone. Silence, except for the soft patter of rain and rustle of leaves. There was no way I'd be able to explain any of this to Dad. And so that's the end of that chapter. And I have a little bit of time, so I am going to go ahead and read. So that's my spooky fun. And I'm going to go ahead and read a tiny bit of this, which is really disturbing and kind of graphic. And it was a lot for me to write. But so this is from a tiny excerpt from The Demon Tailor. And this is about a real life serial killer from 16th century France who believed he was a werewolf. And it's told from the point of view of one of his victims who survived. So this is her, from her point of view. A ripping sound startled me back to my crack beneath the door. The demon tailor was again hunched over his gruesome work. With a wicked instrument in hand, he sliced deeply into the muscles of the corpse, and I silently thanked God it was not Nicole. Much of the blood had already drained, clearly revealing the victim's pink internal flesh and flecks of yellow fat as he tore his way towards her organs. I'd seen pigs slaughtered before and had helped Papa prepare the meat. I knew when the beast pulled out her stomach and intestines, her liver and spleen. He cracked her ribs and removed her heart. One at a time, he placed the organs and chunks of flesh into a heaping bloody mound. When her corpse was naught but an empty shell, he began to remove the bones. Rib by rib, he began filling a great wooden cask. Once it was filled to the top with bones, he dumped the contents of our chamber pots upon them. That's all I'm going to read from that one. That one's really disturbing and dark, but it gives you a little taste of the kind of two extremes of what I write. So I love horror and fantasy. And I'll just real quick say, I've got this new fantasy coming out. I'm so excited in January because all my other stuff is horror, but fantasy. And I'm doing a giveaway. So if you like any of this, from the spooky fun stuff to the really dark twisted stuff, if you sign up on the form, I'm going to give away an ebook of any one of my books that's out that you're interested in. So thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Susan. Oh boy. Yeah, you had me at the barrel of bones. Thank you so much to all of you who came today.